Hello and welcome to Mikelax and Zaktar Destroy the World.
This is the very first episode of this podcast that we've created.
And I think an important thing to touch on is what the hell does this mean?
What is this podcast?
What does it exactly mean? And the thing is, I'm Mike, he's Zach, and each week we're going to come to you with a topic. Both of us are going to have a topic. Neither one of us are going to know what the topic is. We're going to flip a coin. What do you want, heads, Zach?
We'll just decide. We'll flip a coin to determine what the side that we want is going to be ours. So, for example, I want heads right now. So if I get heads here, then I get heads. But if I get tails, then you get heads.
Okay, let's flip it.
So
all right, we're flipping the coin right now. Heads.
So I am going to be heads this week. We're going to flip a coin each week, kind of as an introduction to who is going to be getting the appropriate side of the coin. So I'm heads.
Zach's got heads. I got tails.
So once again, just to recap what we're doing, as Mike briefly said there, we are weekly going to have a topic. I'm going to have a random one. Mike's going to have a random one on top of our heads. The other person's going to be unaware of the topic, so it's new, it's fresh, and we can just kind of roll and improvise.
Yeah,
we're gonna talk about it.
We're gonna talk about it for
human to human, mano a mano, man to man, brain to brain.
10 to 15 minutes, and if it destroys the world, it destroys the world.
So be it.
So be it.
Mikelax and Zaktar Destroy the World.
Are we live?
We're live.
Oh, hey.
We are live on Anchor, ladies and gentlemen.
We're live. All right.
We're live, guys. We're going to flip the coin to see which topic we're going to talk about this week. My topic or
my topic?
Zach.
I do have to warn you, my topic is pretty controversial, I will say. That's all I'm going to say.
Mine is too.
Okay.
So we're going to go ahead and flip the coin now. Can we get a little coin flip, Zach?
Of course. Here we go. Okay. Oh. Let's see. And tails. It's yours.
Actually, it's Zach's.
But we discussed that if it lands on heads, then I get...
One more coin flip. Can I hear the sound effect again? Let's see.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, flip.
Heads.
That's not fair. You're actually not...
It's heads. I actually didn't have a topic.
Okay.
I was hoping it would land on heads so we could talk about whatever Zach's topic was.
Well, my topic is pretty controversial. It is something that it's on a lot of people's minds right now. Just considering the traumatic times that we all are living in right now, 2020 space year. But my topic, and kind of how this works, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to say the topic and we're just going to bounce thoughts back and forth to one another, okay? So my topic is a podcast. Like podcasts in general. That's my topic.
Just podcast?
Yeah, so that's pretty much it. So especially right now, a lot of people may not be in work, or they're afraid to kind of go outside because of the coronavirus disease 2019. And the podcast has been, especially the past few years, I've noticed it's been on everybody's, brain. People are doing podcasts and people are thinking about podcasts. People, let's do a podcast. I want to listen to my favorite podcast. What are some of your favorite podcasts, Michael?
I'm a podcast guy. I like to listen to them on my commute to work.
That's or if you have a transit system, or if you have like buses, or if you take a taxi, maybe an Uber or something.
Or maybe you're retired.
Maybe you're retarded.
Maybe you're retired and you just like sitting in your hot garage listening to the Joe Rogan Experience.
So we can all agree, a lot of males... you guys are probably going to guess right now. You're guessing, Zach is definitely in his maybe early 20s. He's definitely at least 21, 22.
He's at least 6'2".
And he's at least 154 pounds. And you already know a lot of males in their 20s do listen to the Joe Rogan podcast. I'm not sure what is so appealing about podcasts in general, you think?
I don't know what in my opinion, what makes the Joe Rogan podcast a bit entertaining, at least for the most part, is because he has some interesting guests on there.
So the secret formula, per se, to a good, entertaining podcast is the guest. I don't think that's always the case, though.
For me,
for example, I mean, you and I don't have guests. I mean, this is our first podcast.
We're guests from each other. Maybe we will have guests in the future.
Because, yeah, that's true. I mean, I guess you're a guest for me. I mean, we don't really get to spend a lot of time together. I mean, you're always working, you know.
And you're doing the same. I'm a guest to you. You're a guest to me.
So I guess maybe... I guess we're
both guests. I guess we're both the guests. But I do think, at least in my opinion, that what makes a good podcast, maybe not a good podcast, but it has to have something of value to the listener.
That's what it is all about. See, that's kind of the thing. It's going to be, if you're interested in something in particular, you're going to listen to the podcast. Me, for example, I like playing video games, not going to lie. My fingers like touching those buttons on my controller, sitting on a sofa. And I like listening to video game podcasts. That's a hobby of mine. You might have somebody that's interested in maybe carpentry. You might have somebody that's interested in maybe painting or cooking, something like that. And they're going to listen to a podcast that pertains to their particular tastes and opinions.
See, I like wrestling podcasts.
Wrestling, professional wrestling, yeah.
Those are fun to listen to.
See, now if somebody wasn't a fan of, if they didn't really have a high opinion of professional wrestling or video games or anything like that, they wouldn't listen to it.
They wouldn't give them the time of day. But one thing that's actually become really big over the last few years are like serial killer podcasts, murder podcasts. Why do you think that is, Zach? I
don't know. Once again, I guess a lot of people have...
Is it the story? Do you think it's the story of it? People want to listen to a good story, a good tale, even if it's real.
That's true. Nice fictional...
Well, most of them are real. They're about like Jeffrey Dahmer and killing
Jeffrey
people.
Who?
Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dalmatian.
Now, what does that say about our society?
You mind getting a little closer to the mic, Zach?
Sorry.
Jamie, turn up his levels, Jamie.
So, I mean, this is just shower talk, guys. We could have even named the podcast Shower Talk, because this is just stuff that I think about while in my shower, while I'm washing my body and my hair with shampoo and conditioner. Because honestly, everything is subjective. Everything is perception, because it just depends on the person that is receiving the information.
Yes, that's correct. What do you think? Just let's say somebody is they're asexual, right? They're asexual. They don't have any interest. They
don't have any internal organs.
They're mush. Let's say what's a podcast that you think they would listen to? I think I don't know. Maybe if Joe Rogan, or some of these others that. It does kind of have specific topics, though. Sometimes they have David Goggins on there. Okay. Sometimes they have comedians. Sometimes they talk about guns or the coronavirus. What do you think? What's just a podcast that covers a bunch of different spectrums? I think that's what makes Joe Rogan so podcast.
Absolutely, Mike. I completely 100% agree. I mean, Joe Rogan... We're going to see how many times we can say the name Joe Rogan this afternoon. On this podcast, Mikelax and Zaktar destroy the world. We're going to see how many times we can mention Mr. Joe Rogan's name. So I honestly think, yes, Joe Rogan, that is what is appealing to him. I mean, I've seen people on the far left, politically leaning far left. That's what I'm talking about. Politically leaning far left. I've seen people politically leaning far right come onto his show. And that's kind of what is the glory of Mr. Joe Rogan. He's had, some real interesting characters on there.
Yeah.
What I would really like to see, honestly? I would love to see an altercation on the Joe Rogan podcast.
I think there has been, because he has a lot of those guys that they like to fight.
I want to see a legitimate I want to see somebody. I want to see Joe Rogan like live on YouTube doing one of those podcasts, getting into a fight with like they gets pissed off and they're arguing. And he's like, you know what, get out of here, Jamie. And then there's like a security officer that comes. And I would love to.
They arrest him and he's like, it's on on the microphone. He's like, Jamie, get those volumes down.
So I mean, yeah, I mean once again it is going to be perception, subjective opinion when it comes to that. What is the first podcast you really got into, Mike?
Mine was a wrestling podcast. I think the first time I literally ever listened to a podcast because I thought they were bad.
Yeah.
I didn't want to listen to somebody talk for a long time. I was like, that can't be entertaining, can it?
Yeah.
But it's that when we used to wrestle and we were driving, we listened to
The Art of Wrestling.
The Art of Wrestling at Colt Cabana, and it would just talk about or did interview wrestlers that were up and coming, and they had stories to tell, and they were interesting, and you really got to dive deep into their lives,
which was really cool. That's what. Yeah, that was kind of my introduction too. Was that one. I honestly remember around that time, like listening to Joe Rogan at first. I was like, I don't really.
It's terrible. Yeah,
I was like, I don't really.
I knew some people that listened to him, and
I was like,
and I just wasn't really into it. Didn't really have anything of value. I think the thing that Joe Rogan has gotten really good at, and I think any podcaster should be good at.
So take notes, guys.
So take notes because we know everything. Is that you need to visualize the story in your head. I think that's the best thing.
And that's the thing is a lot of podcasts are just people just thinking they know everything, because we do.
Yeah, we know absolutely everything you need to know about everything.
So our opinion right now, what we're saying, the thoughts that are popping into our brains, and then us translating it through our mouths and speaking our opinion, it is everything. It's
fact.
It's fact. It's what we're saying right now is absolute truth.
And that's one thing that you can rest assured on this podcast. You're going to get the absolute truth and
unfiltered,
uncensored, uncut. But would you agree with that, though, Zach? Would you agree that a good podcaster makes you see the visual in your brain? You can visualize what they're talking about. Maybe that's why murder podcasts.
I understand.
Maybe that's why murder podcasts are so entertaining, because you can visualize the knife going into the girl that he's raping.
It's something that you've always thought about doing, but
never actually went through with it.
Now, a podcast, for example, that I like we were talking about guests earlier, how a lot of time the guest is the main reason you're watching. So, Mark Maron's podcast.
Yeah.
He's annoying. I think Mark Maron's a little annoying. See, this is my opinion. Do you understand? This is my opinion. He has some great guests, but same with Joe Rogan.
Don't cancel Zach. Just his opinion. Yeah,
this is just my opinion. Don't come back 5 years later and go, oh, Zach on this podcast said retarded.
Mark Maron's like, I'm going to get that fucker Zach. He's going down.
Oh, boy.
Uh-oh. He's going to be the Mark Maron listens to her phone. But I agree with Zach. He's boring, but he's probably a good interviewer. And they keep the conversation rolling, they keep it going. If it's a storyteller, if their podcast is going to be successful, they need to be a good storyteller.
And sometimes even a good that I enjoy, some podcasts, they don't even really have guests. They just have, once again, topics that pertains to your personal tastes and interests.
I've also heard like movie podcasts.
Yeah,
those are good. Well, actually, like people they act. It's like a play.
There's this one about The Sopranos, the television show, where two of the cats. It's been 20 years since that show has been off the air, but the two of the cast members go back and watch episode by episode, and they break down the episode. Which once again,
it's good.
It's tastes. It's your tastes of the particular topic.
Yeah, you
know what I'm saying?
You're getting a little more of people's opinion on it, and you're also,
because that's what the world revolves around. It's opinion. Opinions are the centerfold of the world.
Because some guy is driving in his car to go to his job
that he hates,
that he lives paycheck to paycheck, and he sits there and he's in his car and he's like, "Damn, I never thought about it that way." Huh, that's interesting. That's an interesting perspective on that. I'm going to continue to listen to this podcast. and he listens to it for his whole drive to work, 60 minutes. This is a question, Zach, since this was your topic this week.
Hit me.
What is your favorite episode of a podcast that you've ever listened to?
Oh my God, that is...
that you're like, wow, I wish there was more. This podcast was an hour, but I wish there was absolutely more of this podcast. The first thing that comes to mind.
The first thing that came into my head was there's been a few Talk is Jericho ones where he's talking to
Chris Jericho, yes.
Yeah, Chris Jericho. Like one in particular, like I really enjoyed. I mean, just all of them, honestly. He had one with like Hulk Hogan that I really enjoyed, and Bret Hart, and just that kind of stuff.
That's because that's another Talk is Jericho. Even if you're not a wrestling fan, one he did with this is actually probably one of my favorite podcasts, was with the film director Eli Roth.
Oh, that one's really good. Yeah,
Eli Roth. They talk about slasher movies, and that is literally a great topic because there's so many, and they talked about the history. And Chris Jericho was really knowledgeable, and obviously Eli Roth, the sick motherfucker that he is.
He's great. I've listened to a few podcasts with Eli Roth, and he's awesome. He's a very interesting guy.
He's like, movies, the 1974 movie,
He's like, Mad Men was a wonderful movie in the 1980s, and the sick, the gore, the trauma, the lizards.
I was listening to some really awesome podcast. It was like some director guy, and he had just a bunch of, it's like a horror podcast. He had like Stephen King, he had John Carpenter, and Eli Roth. It was, once again,
great guest.
my personal taste.
But great guest.
Great guest.
Great guest.
Did you get a good inside look at the topic that you're interested in? That's what's so entertaining. And that's what we try to do here on Mikelax and Zaktar
Destroy the World.
Because what we want to do is we want to try and bring knowledge. We want to try and bring the information that maybe you're interested in, maybe you're not. If you're not, then fucking push. My first cuss word, sorry. Go ahead and push the pause button right now.
And you can take your phone and you can put Vaseline on it and put it in a little baggie. And then you can put Vaseline on the baggie and tell them what they can do with that bag, Zach.
You can take the bag, you can put a little rubber band around it, tie it up, and you can shove it inside of your asshole. See, if you would have already stopped listening right now, you wouldn't even heard that. So in reality, we can cuss. This is a cussing podcast. Can we do cuss?
Hey, I already broke it.
Okay.
No bleeps up here. This is
Unfiltered,
raw, mature. But I think that's kind of closing though, Zach, because we're going over 15 minutes. But closing, I think that's something that gives the listener knowledge is what is of value to a podcast. Is that right? Whether it be about murder, whether it be about math, whether it be about science, whether it be about guns, whether it be about politics,
socks,
the coronavirus, transsexuals, whether it will be just about anything,
knowledge. I agree to a point. Sometimes it's kind of fun just to
listen to talk.
This is kind of why this particular podcast that me and Mikelax are doing is because this is just, there's not really any type of there is knowledge, I guess, but it's just information.
It's just information, it's just opinions.
It's just us spewing. We're gonna spew all we want over this little microphone we have, and we can just say and do and act and feel
whatever
and touch on whatever topic comes into our minds.
So guys, this week was about podcast and our opinions on podcasts. And just remember, opinions are like castles. Everybody has one. And I want to say thank you for listening to the first edition of
Mikelax and Zaktar
Destroy the World. Join us again next week for another exciting episode of the show where we're going to flip a coin and decide what the topic is. All right, guys.
I wonder what it will be. I guess you'll have to wait and find out.
Have a good night, everybody.